Hey guys, welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill, Jay Miller if you like. So let's get into it. Yesterday I went through, some of the positive things that could happen for the Cowboys that would end up in a positive season. Unfortunately, I got to be the Debbie Downer today and go through some of the things that could go negatively for the Cowboys to have a bad season. So I think first things first, the elephant in the room is so many people on a 1 year deal. You got the defensive coordinator on a 1 year deal. You got the quarterback on a 1 year deal. You got the head coach on a 1 year deal. And the only long term player you have locked up are, you know, Trayvon Diggs, Terrence Steele, Tyler Smith, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and your rookies. Everybody else is pretty much up in the air. Cowboys had a lot of free agents last year. They're going to have some more this year as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the team responds to that. I don't really have an analog for this. A lot of times, I've been listening a lot to Brian Baldus and Bobby Belt and Vouch and Foots the King. Shout out to all those guys. They're amazing. They're the Mount Rushmore of Cowboys podcast right now, Law Nation, all of them. But I don't really. I know everybody likes to compare 2019 to this, but I don't think 2019 is really a good comparison to this. Only because I believe that 2019 team is a little bit more talented than this team is. So I can't compare it. So this is going to be a trial by fire. You have a lot of people in the last years of their deal, whether I agree with it or not, that's not what I'm here to talk about. It's more so like the uncertainty. And when you have uncertainty around an NFL team like that, I did touch on it a little bit yesterday when I gave the best case scenario. I did say that I think the Cowboys will start slow, right? But there's some games further on once they kind of get after that San Francisco game where they can make some headway. Cowboys are always good in the division, and Dak Prescott pretty much wins more than he loses. I don't even know if I can think of it when he's been fully healthy besides 2020 when they started off, 1-4 with him at quarterback. There really hasn't been a losing season in Dak Prescott's career. You take 2020 because he got injured, so we don't know how that would have ended. But you take 2020 out the window. Every year he's been a 500 or better quarterback. So I don't know if we've ever been in this situation before. But Dak Prescott being on the last year of his deal, I have a feeling he'll play well. But, Mike McCarthy also being on the last year of his deal, Zimmer only having a 1 year deal, and then a lot of these players either being young or, either in the second to last year or last year of their deal. So I don't know how that's going to affect the team mentally as far as them wanting to play for themselves or play for the team together. I don't agree with Jerry Jones on much, but I do agree with Jerry Jones that when you put somebody into a corner, there's going to be two outcomes. They're either going to cower or they're going to come out fighting, right? You corner a dog, they either cower in the corner and let you do what you will, or they come out snapping and barking and clawing at you so that they can get out of that corner and get to where they need to go. This Cowboys team basically is a cornered dog at this point, and I don't know what kind of dog they are in this fight. So we'll get to see a lot of that. So that's one of the first things. The second thing that could go wrong is some of the aging veterans that they traded for. So they traded for Carl Lawson. They traded for Phillips. They traded for Linval Joseph. And they signed Eric Kendricks. So Eric Kendricks is supposed to play a big part in this defense. He knows Zimmer's scheme. He's over 30 years old, but he's been durable his entire career, and he's played well his entire career. Even though he slowed down from the beginning, he's still a good player. Linval Joseph is not the player he was when he first started. But what the Cowboys are looking for him to do is just take up blockers. he can do that out of his sleep. He can wake up out of his bed and do that. Jordan Phillips has always had a little bit of injury history, even though, as I went over earlier before, he's actually played a decent amount of games over the last couple of years, more so than what his injury history gives us. His injury history is there. It's prevalent. It's something we need to consider. But he's actually played more games. So I feel like, if Carl Lawson and Linville Joseph and Jordan Phillips spend a significant time on the injury list, and then you have someone like Micah Parsons, who I love Micah. Micah's one of my dudes. You know what I'm saying? He's a really good player, generational, transcendent, whatever adjective you want to use to describe him is probably accurate. But one of the things he also does is he's a sack hunter, right? There were times last year where the play called for, hey, maintain your lane, maintain the outside, force the run inside, not necessarily get upfield, and he went to go hunt a sack. And because he was hunting a sack, the run snuck right in between them, and boom, big play. A lot of the times where we were seeing a lot of trouble with offenses running against the Cowboys, one was up the middle, that's no secret. But the other big one that I saw, to me, that was more troubling than up the middle was to the left side of the offense, which is to the right side of the defense, which was mostly the Trayvon Diggs and Micah Parsons side. If that continues to be a problem, if they continue to be able to capture that edge and run that ball forcefully, the Cowboys are going to be in a lot of games where either it's close and the other team doesn't stop running, or they're behind and the other team doesn't stop running. And what we've seen is we're not equipped to play even or behind for the entire game. It's, we have some games that end up like, hey, they end up like Detroit. They end up like Seattle. We're close or behind the entire game, or just a smidge ahead, and we pull it out. But there's also games like Miami, where we're close or behind that game and we can't pull it out. There's the playoff game, the 19-12 game in San Francisco, the game where the Cowboys had the home field advantage and Zeke famously lines up at center at the last play to snap the ball. Those are games where we were close or slightly behind and we didn't pull it out. So as much as I think the Cowboys will be okay at the worst in the regular season, there is going to be some of those games where we're going to be in these same exact situations because it is the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Cowboys' psyche can overcome that. We have a young player in Cooper Beebe at center. We have a young player in Tyler Guyton at left tackle. We have a young player, Maris Leofau, and we have a young player, DeMarvion Overshown. All these players are going to be thrust into big moments, and it's going to be completely unknown whether or not they can rise to those occasions. So that's something that I'm looking at as well, to see if the Cowboys have corrected or at least have some hope for now or in the future. But with the way everything's structured this year, it has to be now. It can't necessarily be the future. Another thing that could go wrong, Brandon Cooks could all of a sudden be long in the tooth. When players age in the NFL, it's dramatically. It's dog years. Like 1 year you could be, getting 60 catches for 800 yards and 7 touchdowns. And then all of a sudden you've aged out and now you might get 40 catches for 300 yards and 1 touchdown. But the team was depending on you to accumulate those same types of volume stats that you did the year before. They just didn't know it was over. Now, this is the last year of Brandon Cook's deal, so moving forward, the Cowboys don't have any obligation. That's cap space that frees up. But if they're looking to do anything different than they've done in the last 29 years, they can't afford to have a fall off like that. Another thing that could be a problem for us this year is the running game. I know I talked about the running game in a positive light because the offensive line blocking yesterday, but Zeke is an older back. Zeke is an older back. It's just nothing we can do to change that. He's going to get the bulk of the snaps. The Cowboys have to hope that their faith is in the right place, because what I saw during training camp, I would not have had Zeke on this final roster. I definitely would have cut him. Maybe brought him back in the practice squad just because we know him, and elevated him a couple of times, and then once that was all done, release him. Also, the Cowboys didn't go. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The Cowboys didn't go the way I wanted to go when it came to signing a running back to the practice squad. They went to Malik Davis, which we know what he is. We saw what he was. And honestly, in the games, he showed something awesome. But, and I'm talking about the games a couple of years ago. But as of now, he hasn't continued that. And then you signed Dalvin Cook, who wasn't necessarily lighting the world on fire last year. So the Cowboys have kind of placed their eggs in an unproductive basket. I would have rather seen, if we're going to have two running backs, give me Snoop Conner, give me Nathaniel Pete. Give me those two young guys that I don't know a lot about, and let's get them some reps, and let's see what happens there. But the Cowboys decided to go a guy they've had on the practice squad for a few years now, and a nearly 30-year-old running back that showed almost nothing last year. And that could end up being detrimental when you combine that with Ezekiel Elliott. You combine that with an undersized Deuce Vaughn. You combine that with injury history of Rico Dowdle. You combine that with, Hunter Lipke, who is probably pretty solid, but still had his fumbling issues last year as well. And then, of course, if we want to really get to the elephant in the room, we can talk about Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott has consistently been regular season good. It's almost amazing to me how much him and Tony Romo's careers parallel. I do believe Tony Romo was a far better quarterback than Dak Prescott was, especially in the aspect of processing post-snap. And I know you guys are going to look at me and go, processing post-snap? Romo always threw interceptions in the clutch time. But that's just what history wants you to remember. I watched every Cowboys game pretty much over the last 25 years. Haven't missed one at all. And I'm telling you, even though, he did have a penchant, especially earlier in his career, for throwing interceptions, what history doesn't necessarily remind you of is the 5 interception game against Buffalo that he leads a drive at the last minute to win the game, even though he threw 5 interceptions. The history doesn't tell you that, he's went into the penultimate game of the season in 2013 and he hurts his back, right? That's the whole time where Romo's end of his career pretty much started. End of 2023, he's almost getting sacked. He makes one of his patented Romo moves. He spins out. He freaking hurts his back, but he throws a touchdown pass to DeMarco Murray to keep the Cowboys in the playoff hunt for the last game of the season. Now, because he hurt his back so bad and he herniated a disc, he couldn't play in that final game of the season, and it ended up being Kyle Orton against the Philadelphia Eagles. And what do you know? We get washed, we get wiped, and Philadelphia's in the playoffs, Cowboys are home. But Romo made the clutch play to keep the Cowboys in it. And then a lot of those years where Romo was throwing those interceptions late in the game, where we were finishing 8-8, he was playing behind a Phil Costa. His running back was a Philip Tanner. Romo did not have the team and the weapons around him that Dak Prescott has. So even though I compare the two because their careers are similar, they have the same amount of playoff wins. Dak Prescott has one more playoff loss. It is a little bit different only because Romo probably had a little bit more talent than Dak Prescott. But with that being said, Dak Prescott is going to get to a point in this season where it's put up or shut up, right? You want $60 million a year. That's what you want. You want to be the highest paid player in NFL history for the second time. And if that's what you want, what do we say? If you want to get somewhere you've never been, you got to do something that you've never done, right? Dak Prescott, to me, has to do something that he's never done. Now, I don't think the Cowboys are thinking about it the same way I'm thinking about it, right? They're going to give Dak Prescott an extension no matter what. They're going to offer him something ridiculous, whether it's before the season, during the season, or after the season. When Romo got to the end of his contract in 2013, everybody thought, oh my God, what's going to happen? He has no more contract. And before free agency opened, the Cowboys ended up giving him $55 million guaranteed, which was a lot at the time. And Romo ended up on that contract, making a crap load of money, and he hadn't necessarily taken the Cowboys to where they needed to go. Dak Prescott is probably going to get a very similar situation. Even if he waits it out, even if he goes out and shops around and brings a deal back to the Cowboys, they'll probably get the first right of refusal. He'll probably be a Cowboy. If I'm the Cowboys, I know they're saying they want a longer deal so they can massage the cap because the Cowboys are terrible at managing the cap. But I would give Dak exactly what he wants, 3 years. If we're going to give him a new deal, give him a 3-year deal, let it go. But with that being said, Dak is going to come to a point this season where he has to do something that he hasn't done. He's going to have to get to the playoffs and actually carry the team. And a lot of fans want to say, well, why is that all on Dak? It's because Dak wants the most money of anyone ever. That's why it's all on Dak. If we're going to give Dak praise for finishing second in the MVP race last year, then we also have to kind of smash him a little bit for basically shitting the bed against the Green Bay Packers. So you can't have it both ways. You can't get the awesome praise and then get everybody on the other end saying, well, he doesn't have enough help. No, we can't do that. We got to hold it to the same standard on both ends, right? We got to burn the midnight oil on both ends. So that's that. One of the other parts that could be a detriment to the Cowboys this year is Trayvon Diggs. The Cowboys right now have a very recent history of when players are coming back from injuries, whether it's Terrence Steele's ACL, whether it's, Jordan Lewis's foot, whether it's Michael Gallup's ACL. Like, for some reason, our guys, don't even get me started on the LSU linebacker. He was never the same. He's probably out of the league right now. But whether it's an ACL, whether it's a foot injury, a lot of times, Tony Pollard, anyone, our guys come back and they are very slow getting back to their normal self. And I was one of those people that was on the Michael Gallup defense train when he was coming back from his ACL. I'm like, guys, give it a little while. It takes some time to get back to yourself. But he never fully came back. Terrence Steele, towards the end of last year, started to play a little bit better, but the jury's still out on that. Jordan Lewis, it took him weeks to get better. Tony Pollard, he was kind of better at the end of the season, but by the time we get to the playoffs, doesn't really matter. So it's going to be interesting to see if Trayvon Diggs bucks that recent trend. And also DeRon Bland, when he comes back, how long is it going to take him to get back up to speed? We can't assume that when he comes back and he's thrown right into the game that he's going to play well right away. So, you could end up being a Cowboys team that's dug a hole, 2-4, 2-5, and then also still doesn't have quite a Trayvon Diggs playing right, quite a DeRon Bland playing right. Dak Prescott kind of faltering in some of these big games. Rookie still learning curve of the NFL. Running back room not really feeling so good. Maybe some aging veterans injured on the defensive line. And all of a sudden, if that's the scenario, you're looking at a 7-10, a 6-11 season. Because even if you get it back on track, you can't finish 5-5 if you start 2-6. Or I'm sorry, you can't finish 4-5 if you start 2-6. You can't finish 5-4 if you start 2-6. If you start 2-6, you got to finish like 8-1. You know, that's your hope. You got to finish 7-2, and the Cowboys might not have enough time to make up for some of the things that go wrong. And then all of a sudden, some of those things like Mark McCarthy being on his last year coming to play, and Zimmer being on a 1 year deal coming to play, and all of a sudden people are playing for jobs next year, playing for themselves, and not necessarily playing team ball, just trying to rack up stats so that whenever a coaching staff is going to look at film or a front office going to look at film after the season, they're like, we can pluck that guy because he did well. They want to put some good film on. NFL players don't like putting out bad film. So to me, that's the worst case scenario from the Cowboys. All those different situations I laid out. But yeah, that's what I got for you right now. In the future, it's Sunday. We'll start digging really into the Cleveland Browns. I can't wait to watch some of their film, see what some of their players look like, see where some of their weaknesses are, some of their strengths, see how they match up with the Cowboys, see what we might be able to exploit, because I'm hoping what I covered yesterday is more of the scenario than what I covered today. But thank you for tuning in. Knockers on the bottom. If you like, the video, hit the like button, subscribe so you know when I'm coming on. If you want to hit me up at Twitter at JMiller IYL. That's JMiller if you like. Also, you can submit questions via the email knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. Again, that's knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. You can also leave comments below. Hopefully, we can take them all, wrap them into a mailbag, make it a regular thing, answer some questions. But until then, I love you guys. You guys have been great. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. J Miller if you like. I'm your host. Peace.